At LinkedIn, we know hiring is a big deal for your small business. Sometimes it can feel a little overwhelming. LinkedIn uses data that you can't find anywhere else to give you the best candidates, all so you can feel confident you're hiring the best person for the job. And even a little hiring bliss. See why 86% of small businesses who post a job on LinkedIn get a qualified candidate within a day. Post a job for free at linkedin.com/achieve. LinkedIn, your next great hire is here.
Brew Strong is brought to you by Blickman Engineering, home of the Riptide. Visit them online at blickmanengineering.com.
Brewers, it's time for the beer radio you've been looking for. This is the show that dispels myths, tackles the toughest topics, and makes no apologies for geeking out on beer. Hosted by two guys that drink before they think, Jamil Zainasheff and John Palmer. This is Brew Strong.
Hello, everybody. I'm Justin Crossley.
I'm Travis Campbell, and this is Brew Strong.
I almost jumped on you there. Yeah, this is Brew Strong, and I'm filling in for my good friend Jamil. And hopefully you won't have to listen to me for too much longer, although I am enjoying doing this show with Travis and Michael when he's here too. But for now, I'm just filling in for Jamil. He's a little under the weather. He's on the mend, and the show must go on. So that's what we're doing here. And today we've got a Q&A show for you with Huggy Bear from Flix Brewhouse out of Mansfield, Texas. And he's going to help us answer some questions today. Welcome, Huggy. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to answering the burning questions.
Now, this show is live, and we try to do all Brew Strongs live on Facebook. And one of the bonuses there is that you can ask us your questions during the show. You also might get to hear our banter during the break, which, depending on how you look at it, is either a bonus or a negative. I don't know what. Depends on probably if you think extra pale is a stronger pale ale or a lighter pale ale. That's how I would decide if you enjoy listening to the banter. But you can usually find Brew Strong live at least once a month. And in this current month, it's more than once. In fact, I think we might have another show next week. We'll figure it out here soon. But just pay attention. Follow us on the Brewing Network Facebook page, and you can catch us live there to ask questions directly or send them to brewstrong@thebrewingnetwork.com. And then on top of all that, I just want to give a heartfelt thanks to Blickman Engineering, who is still the sponsor of this program after nearly 19 years, I think it is, and just wonderful people over there. We just had Drew Barnes on the show recently, who's a great individual, been working for Blickman for a very long time and just took over as their president. And I think we're going to see great things coming out of Blickman Engineering under Drew's tutelage. So it's just wonderful that they've stuck with us, Travis, because we get to keep bullshitting about beer for our listeners because of those wonderful people, right?
Yeah, and Drew has the passion. He really does. It was a great show. If anyone listening, if you haven't listened to that show, go back 2 episodes. Yeah. They're not sitting on their laurels. They're going to bring it to the next level. They're going to keep doing it, and they probably do a lot of things you don't know about already. I mean, despite the fact they've got the original Blickman line, which 10 years ago when I met Huggy, we were brewing on some of their Blickman stuff back as doing pilot batches at his first pro brewery. And, and they've got the Anvil stuff, which I'm a fan of, my Anvil Foundry. And he said 100-barrel fermenter. Mm-hmm. That caught me off guard. I did not know they were going that big. And it's not that's like, flip the magazine 100 barrels. Like, no, we're talking to our client. Our client wants 100 barrels, so we're going to do it for him. Yeah, that's the kind of company they are. And I didn't know that.
The other thing he said, and it's right along those lines that surprised me. We just didn't have enough time for me to ask him more about it. He said they're totally stoked to hear about new products that clients want, including homebrewers, and that he wants to turn them around in weeks rather than years. I think that was his statement. Yeah, he was like, we have figured out manufacturing processes where we can turn around these ideas. And I just thought, like, oh my God, I can't even get my website updated with it. That takes 4 months for me to happen over here. And
You remember your password?
no, it's saved. Luckily, it's saved in my browser. But so I think we can expect a lot of cool innovations coming out of them under Drew because, yeah, man, he's passionate about this stuff. So, yeah, cool stuff. So thanks to Blickman for doing that. Go to blickmanengineering.com and check it out. So you want to dive into the first question? What do you think?
Yeah, let me find something short on my list here if I can. So direct fired mash tun, and I think we can tackle this one rather easily. Just mentioned without Jamil on the show, I picked the questions because you ask us questions, we want to give you our best answer, and Jamil gives us some really great feedback. We can tackle a lot. We need him for the hardest of them. So this one, direct fired mash tun. Billy writes, pros and cons of mash tuns. For example, it took a year after he stepped up from cooler trials to local shops, finding out that direct fired keg. Basically, let me boil it down. He felt that his direct fired mash tun was producing too much heat on the bottom and was affecting his fermentability. And Huggy, the reason I bring this one up is because I go back to, again, 10 years ago, you and I were direct firing mash tun ferment, pilot beers at your brewery. When, I knew some guys that wanted to try some recipes out. Did you ever get the impression that with a direct fired mash tun, you were affecting the fermentability of your wort?
No. No, I don't think so.
That's why I thought it was a short question. See, there's your answer. No, the answer's no.
No, I also brewed on a Rims, Rims Herm system.
Yeah.
That's the recirculating. Isn't that recirculating? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Rims is recirculating infusion mash system, I guess. And Herms is heat exchange recirculating mash.
So the direct
one of them, the water goes through the pipe, and one of them the mash goes through the pipe.
Yeah. The basis of the question, just so I understand, right, is with too much heat, you might denature the enzymes. Yeah. And he's saying, okay, while maybe I'm just trying to interpret his question here too, right? Like he's saying, in order to bring things up to temp in my direct fire, there's more heat on the bottom than there is on the middle and the top. And he's worried about the denaturing of enzymes, which means that your mash is not going to fully convert all of the fermentables, and in turn affects his fermentation. Is that the base of the question, we think? Yeah.
Yeah, if we really geek out on it, we got our alphas and our betas, and are we heating it too much and going straight into beta? Which effectively are we making a mash along the lines of Lagunitas old school where they did everything I think at 160. But the reality of it is, do it. If you don't like the results, do it a little cooler next time or a little warmer next time and tweak. So inherently, I don't think his hardware is an issue. I think you have to learn from your hardware. And Huggy's a great brewer, and Huggy, you can correct me, but if you get it right the first time, you just must be outstanding. We really have to learn from our processes.
Yeah. I would say while you're heating, make sure your mash is moving. That way you don't have hot spots. Everything's recirculating. So either you're recirculating it with a pump, you're stirring it while you're doing the heating process.
Get your drunk buddy over there with a paddle. He wants your beer. He wants to help.
Yeah.
Let him mix it up.
Yeah. Because then, if it sits on the heat, it might burn, denature, burn, create more melanoidins than you want. But if everything's moving, you should have good heat transfer there.
So that's an excellent point. I kind of forgot about that part. So I've had a Herms system. It was a more beer system. So I'm firing from the bottom. But every time that flame came on, so did my pump, which was taking the liquid from the top and trickling it down on the bottom. So I'm glad I forgot about that part, Huggy. So I'm glad that you mentioned it, because that really does mean I'm recirculating that hot liquid. And that's why the whole thing eventually heats up. If you don't have something to do that, to recirc from the top to the bottom, just grab that spoon, right? Like that's what you guys are saying. Just keep it moving.
Yeah, we didn't have the fancy stuff you had, evidently.
Oh man, I didn't start with the fancy stuff. Jamil donated the fancy stuff to me. That's how I lucked up. I've been a charity case my whole life, John. Let's just be honest. I will say this a bit side.
Man sitting in the office in the back of his bar.
Yeah.
No longer a charity case, man. You're living the dream.
Maybe that's true. I will say this, like just a little side step of this question. The best mash tun I ever had was the very first one I bought from More Beer, and that was an orange igloo cooler with a false bottom. And I've said this before, but like it kept temperature. It just did. Yeah. I mean, I filled it up. I put the lid on it, and an hour later, I think it dropped 2 degrees, and it just was so simple. And once Jamil donated me all the cool stuff, all I did was come on the show and complain about how to fucking use it. It's just like, I don't know how to use this. I can't get my temperature to stay the same thing. So I'm not telling you to throw away your Herm system. I'm just saying, like, and if, for those of you out there who don't deal with this yet, just keep your igloo cooler. It's the best mash tun I ever had. You know,
they're great, and you can just go to your big box hardware store and buy their version of it, and you don't have to have everything fancy on day one.
Yeah,
and like you said, it will keep temp. Those things keep within a couple degrees over an hour plus.
Yeah,
and it's the same thing. If you find that your beer was too dry, well, heat it up a little more next time.
Mm-hmm.
If you're nailing your recipe the first time every time, I want to drink your beer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Good answers. We've got more to come. Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, more of your Q&A. You can send your questions to brewstrong@thebrewingnetwork.com or join us on Facebook. Hang in there. We'll be right back.
We off? 30 seconds of carefree bliss. Oof, like wind in your hair carefree. Oh, like using Clorox Disinfecting All-Purpose Cleaner in the home carefree. Yes. Like dog slobbing on the coffee table and cleaning it with Clorox Carefree? He's on a roll now. Spit toothpaste on the faucet. You got it. You got it. Peanut butter on the light switch. Oh, spritz, spritz. Spritz, spritz. Clorox, man. Clean feels good.
Okay, we're back.
Use as directed.
Are you looking for a simple brewing system that's great for all grain brewing, but everything on the market seems to be full of compromises? Blickman Engineering has the answer. The Blickman Brew Easy All Grain Brewing System. The Brew Easy is a complete system with easy upgrades and a beautiful compact design, perfect for any size brewing location. At its core, the Brew Easy is built on 2 gorgeous Blickman Boilermaker brew kettles, a high-temperature March pump, and either a top-tier gas burner or the new Boil Coil electric heater. The Brew Easy adapter lid allows the pots to stack on top of each other, forming an efficient, strong, and compact brewing setup that comes in 5, 10, and 20-gallon batch sizes. Upgrade your Brew Easy system with full automated control by adding a Blickman Tower of Power temp controller, and make moving around easy with the Blickman Kettle Cart. The Brew Easy is modular. If you already own a Boilermaker kettle, you can build your Brew Easy by purchasing just the modules you need. The new Brew Easy all-grain brewing system. See it today at blickmanengineering.com and brew with Blickman quality on your new Brew Easy.
Back to the beer guys that make other beer guys look like wine guys. Brew Strong.
Welcome back to Brew Strong. We are doing a question and answer show for you, as we like to do here on this program. I'm Justin Crosley, filling in for Jamil Zainasheff. So we're saving some of the more complex questions for Jamil to come back, although I'm sure Huggy could handle it for us. But we're just trying to keep the show running smooth. And basically, I'm trying not to screw up Jamil's show, Travis. I feel like if he comes back, I don't want him to yell at me about, why are you guys giving out the wrong answers? I'm gone for 2 weeks, and this is what happened.
Yeah, and you live closer to him than I do, so you're the first one he's going to get to.
He knows where to find me and everything. Yeah, this is a bad scene. I'll have to call Liz to protection. All right, what questions do we have next?
All right, so Mike submits, and I won't preamble it. Sorry, we'll go through Mike's question. We'll come back to it. Mike submits. Chris White said that Jamil's yeast calculator was incorrect. And that's where I have to pause, because that makes me think we need a grudge match going on between Chris and Jamil. So come back to that. See question 14 below, which Mike didn't really submit 14 plus questions. And Mike does admit if he's being a moron, perhaps someone much smarter, Jamil could clarify. Mike, you're not being a moron, and Jamil's not here to clarify, but we can help you. He gives us a URL that does have a bunch of questions. And the question 14, though, is to Chris White. You sell 100 billion cells per package. These packages include instructions indicating they are directly pitchable into 5 gallons of wort up to 1060. However, every brewer of any experience seems to accept as gospel that yeast starters are required for nearly any batch. Jamil Z's online calculator claims that 100 billion cells are barely enough for 5 gallons at 1034, for example. Why then has White Labs not marketed a package of 200 or 250 billion cells for homebrew use? And dating this just a little bit, the new packages are, I believe, 150s.
Yeah, that's how I was going to look that up. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe they're one. Crystal keeps it a little close to chest. They're outstanding, the new packages. This would allow homebrewers to brew beers in the meat of homebrewing space, say 1050 to 1075, without the trouble of making starters for every batch. Laboratory. Oh, so there's an answer posted on the same website that's got these questions, and the answer is we are actually increasing the number of cells per package to 2.5 to 3 billion cells per ml, so density. And laboratory grown yeast won't necessarily follow the pitching rate guidelines since they are very healthy. The pitching rate recommendations traditionally refer to repitched yeast. Also, you're not getting a lot of growth from a starter unless it is an adequate size. So I don't see a conflict here, Mike. I see we're talking about a complex issue. And Huggy, you use quite the calculator. I've brewed with you. If anyone who's on the last show, I like to brag about it. Huggy and I did a couple pilot batches. He's a pro. I'm not. But you use too. Yeah, that's right. That's right. So you use a calculator. You use quite the yeast density as well when you pitch. Now, but you also buy brand new pitches. In your case, would you call up White Labs and say, "Hey, White Labs, I've got 30 barrels. I'm gonna, or whatever size you're probably on, a 10 barrel, 7 barrel at Flix now."
7 barrel here.
7. Do you buy a 7 barrel pitch? You probably do. You probably don't have the space to do a starter.
No, we'll do some starters. We'll do some dry. Sometimes we'll pitch dry yeast. Actually, some of the 500 gram bricks are, depending on the size of the beer, are just enough to do a 7 barrel batch. Or sometimes I'll do some half batches, especially the bigger beers. I just brewed a Belgian triple, and so I did a 500 gram pack and do a 3.5 barrel batch. I just tasted it. It's about 10.5%, so it's
nice,
quite the burner. But I'll get a 1 barrel pitch and we'll prop it up. So I got a little 10 yeast brink. It's 15. It's like a 15.5 gallon keg with valves on it.
Half barrel.
Temperature, a little half barrel keg with little all the little fittings on it to make it easy to pitch yeast. And so I'll pitch, depending on the beer, I'll do a 1 barrel pitch, and then I'll brew 2 beers in a row. So 1 beer, I'll brew a lighter beer on the first day, and then pitch about 10 gallons into that, pitch the 1 barrel into that, and then prop that yeast, and then repitch that on the second day into the next beer.
So with the bricks are huge. I mean, quantity of yeast in the brick, they're significant. It's not the same as the liquid yeast, right? I mean, the dried yeast bricks tend to run large.
Yeah, they're dense. I mean, it's all liquid, so it's all evaporated out. So it's a pretty dense cells per gram or whatever.
And if you were to buy a White Labs pitch, though, it'd probably be a week old at the most when you got it, right?
Yeah, on the pro side, it's pretty fresh yeast we're getting. If not, usually within a week or so. Sometimes some of the yeast manufacturers will grow on demand, and so they'll have a few of the main varieties in stock, and then after that you have to give them like a week's heads up so they can pull it from a slant and propagate it up and then ship it out to you. Mm-hmm. And so some of those you have to give them a heads up if you want certain strains that are not as common.
And it may even show up cold.
Oh yeah, no, they ship those cold. Yeah, all the liquid is shipped cold with ice packs, and usually on the pro side, a lot of the cost for the yeast is the shipping, because they ship it next day, overnight, early morning.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So it's overnight, early morning delivery.
Mike's asking an outstanding question, but the difference from Mike and I are going to our homebrew shop. We don't know the condition of the yeast when it arrived at the homebrew shop. We don't even know if they received it immediately and got it on ice, assuming it was still cold. We don't know if our homebrew shop paid for overnight shipping because they want their prices to be as low as possible, so we'll buy from them. There's all these variables that go in, and look, Chris is not lying and Jamil's not lying. We're just talking about two different things here. Chris is talking about ideal yeast as he wants us to receive it, and Jamil, I've talked to him extensively about his calculator, which unfortunately we can't use right now. Hope we can get that revitalized. He took yeast that he bought from his homebrew shop, which I guess we shouldn't mention, which was probably typical and fine, and he grew it. And he didn't just imagine how much yeast was in there. He measured it, and you showed me that 10 years ago. Hemocytometer, you got the microscope, you played it out. You know how much yeast you have.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's not guesswork. These guys are not at odds. They're just in two different worlds. One's at the factory and one's on the receiving end.
And I would say a lot of times the yeast starter is kind of on the homebrew side. If you do a yeast starter, it's kind of your proof of life kind of thing. You're just in making sure everything's active, ready to go, and you'll have less of a lag as well when you get your pitch in active yeast.
And so I think that Travis, you described it about the best way you could. That we're just coming from two different spectrums. And by the way, at the start of this question, I've sat in on this grudge match. These are two of my best friends on the planet, Chris White and Jamil. And I have sat in on this debate between them off air. And it's gnarly. It's an ugly debate. But it's because they're coming from two different places, like you said. And so Jamil, who really stands by his convictions, did a test, did a measurement. By the way, this was years ago that he did this. And in his educated opinion, there just were not enough viable cells. So he wanted to do a starter to build it up. If your practices are good, neither Chris or Jamil would argue doing a starter. Chris would argue, though, that not everybody at the homebrew levels sanitary practices are that good. Their laboratory practices are not that good. So Chris would argue, even with less cells, the chance of contamination from my yeast that came from the factory is so minuscule that you're better off dealing with that. Jamil's argument is, just figure out how to do a starter right, and you're going to get all the cells you need. And in an active pitch, like Huggy is saying, an active pitch can be better than a dormant pitch that has to wake up over a day or two. I will also add, and especially because you mentioned, Travis, that Jamil's pitch count calculator is not really available right now. White Labs has added a pitch calculator to their website. They've also increased their the amount, as you've mentioned, the amount of cells. It's something like 7.5 million per milliliter now. I don't know how many milliliters, and that could be too. So don't quote me on those things. But the argument, it always was just like, but can you safely make a yeast starter was kind of Chris White's thing. And of course, I think you're correct in saying that, like, Chris wasn't really, maybe not accounting for how many died off by the time we used it. Although I think Chris would say, no, that's all in the math. We did the math. We did the math for you. It's why we call it pitchable yeast,
And Chris sells outstanding yeast. I love White Labs as a product. I use almost exclusively White Labs. I just, neither he nor I can know how my local homebrew shop has handled that, or UPS for that matter. Has handled that yeast before I got it. So if you don't want to do a starter, White Labs used to get you there. But if you do want to do a starter, it'll get you there a little bit better, a little faster, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, hey, next time we have a White Labs question, you just tell me in advance because I'm going to humble brag right now. I'll just get Chris on the phone. We'll have Chris on the phone. It might not end the debate because then next week Jamil will come on and be like, nope.
Nah, Chris, you're totally wrong, man. It doesn't. We don't get that kind of. Yeah. No. And the new packs that he's selling are it makes the math interesting because it's a different size. Their quality when I get great pitches off the new product. The
Sure.
Can't remember
And
what
then back to starters, by the way, Huggy, correct me if I'm wrong. Cost is a factor at the pro brew level. So you might not purchase the amount of cells that you need from White Labs, but you're going to purchase a fresh pitch, and then you're going to throw it up a little bit because it might save you a couple bucks. Is that something that happens, or when you buy a fresh pitch, is it just that's the whole thing you're using for that beer?
Yeah, I've been at breweries where we buy a full pitch size. Now where I'm at, we have some equipment to prop it up, and
Nice.
Good practices to prop it up. So we're propping up some smaller pitches.
Okay.
It depends on your equipment and your level, especially on the pro level. You want to be very sanitary, very careful of that stuff, because especially if you're repitching yeast multiple times, you don't want to get something bad in there, and then you get all kinds of batches after that are just as bad.
Sure. All right. And then just one final answer on that. And this is one I think that Jamil would get behind us for, Travis. Split your batch, right? Brew a 10-gallon batch. Do one with Jamil's yeast pitch calculator that you propagated up to where it's supposed to be. And do the other one where you just throw the pitch in that you bought from White Labs and taste the beer and follow and collect the data. Right. Because, gravity, you're going to collect. Did one drop to where it's supposed to? Did one have some off flavors? I do think that in the long run, even though that Jamil would love having a debate about this, he would also say, why don't you just prove it to yourself? And I think he'd be pretty confident that his pitch calculator would be the one that did the right thing. But you get to, split batches can be the key to almost every question I think we get on these shows, right? And
absolutely.
And I'm not talking about more work. I'm not saying brew 2 batches in a day. I mean, split your one batch into 2 different fermenters and try both methods. And I think that will give you your answer for your brewery, right?
Honey, I have to brew 10 gallons for science.
Yeah.
I know I used to do 5 gallons. I have to do 10 gallons for science. I apologize in advance.
Hey, science thanks you, I think.
So along the lines, we're good on time?
Yeah.
So along the lines of yeast, Peter Simons asked a question that, Huggy, you might be familiar with this. I am not. Yeast washing best practices for repitching yeast is his generic question, which I understand, but he goes on to state, and it's where it trips me up. I want to try using a clean oxide tablet in 500 ml water with an equal amount of harvested yeast slurry, mix it up and let it work for 15-20 minutes, then add to the fermenter. I'm not familiar with clean oxide, and I said we might have to look it up, and Peter asked it a half hour ago. I guess I've been a lazy bastard sitting here on the show.
What have you been doing? Hosting a show?
Nice. You're doing the main host. I appreciate it. So can we answer this without understanding clean oxide, or do we have to come back after we understand what clean oxide is?
Yeah, I haven't. I was just doing some quick searching on it. It's chlorine dioxide. It'll kill bacteria, and it'll it looks like you can use it to wash your yeast, kill the weaker stuff and let the yeast live. I would say yeast washing, it's something I just wouldn't recommend anymore. It's easier to, if you can get a good pull of yeast and leave it in your fridge and keep it cold, you'll see it separate out. You'll have a lot of true will fall on the bottom. You'll have beer will be on top, and you'll have the good yeast in the middle. And if you can separate that, especially if you pour it in like a long graduated cylinder or a tall glass, it'll be easier to separate your levels and just get the clean yeast out of the middle, basically.
Amazing how related that is to his follow-up question.
I
Honestly,
do love
absolutely amazing.
Before you get to the follow-up question, I love the keep it simple nature of that answer because I'm just like, I don't know. If you have to wash your yeast, I'm already saying no. I'm already like, I'm already in the no category. Like, it should be repitchable. And if you can do it the simple way with a little bit of time and separation, that's where I'm at. If I have to bring in a thing to wash the yeast, I'm buying a new pitch. And maybe that's me being a privileged individual. I don't know what, but it sounds like a bad idea. That's just
when Huggy said chlorine, that's what told me I don't want that near my beer. If the yeast survives, my beer is going to taste. I don't want to say what is this a PG show? It's not a PG. It's going to taste like ass.
Yeah,
chlorine has ruined some beers for me when I first moved here to Houston, and I wasn't getting good enough filtration, etc.
Yeah,
I made some IPAs they made brutal bitter look like gentle bitter.
yeah.
It wasn't good.
Well, now Peter's a great brewer, by the way, so he clearly knows things that I don't. I just like a keep it simple, stupid person. Yeah. So
I think Peter knows what he's asking us. Yeah. Intentionally, honestly, and Peter, I appreciate it. We need to have Peter on the show. We do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Question 2: best way to harvest some yeast from commercial brewers conical. When what portion of the cone? He answers it mid, and then he had the question, so it moved my prompt. Temporary storage, SS growler. In general, if you have a pro that's going to give you a pitch, how do you know you're getting a pitch worth taking, and how do you handle it after that pro gives it to you?
Yeah. So on the pro side, obviously, when you're brewing, you're making more yeast than you need when you're done brewing. Usually it's 3 to 5 times as much yeast. You can repitch of that. So if you had brewed the same beer, you could repitch it into 3 of the same size beers again, and have enough yeast for all 3 of them. So you're ending up with so much yeast. We're dumping a lot of it. So yeah, you want to dump out stuff off the bottom is going to be your dead yeast, your true, and then you want to get kind of that juicy middle, kind of that good stuff in the middle, and then So if you pull it, So if he's a home brewer getting it from a pro brewery, he's getting a pitch from them. Yeah, you want to put it in a clean, sanitary vessel. Stainless steel growler. That's a good idea. You also want to leave a little bit of beer on top of that yeast. Ideally, the beer from where you're pulling the yeast from. You can always use like sterilized water. That'll kind of help protect it against oxygen. It'll help protect it, having that little layer on top. And then you want to seal it up and then use it pretty quickly. We've repitched yeast, and then we'll start in kegs, maybe in the cooler. We want to use it within a week, and even that week's kind of pushing it. Usually we want to use it in less than a week.
Mm-hmm. And now that week,
go ahead.
That week is because, well, first off, you're not, as not a home brewer, you're not gonna pull it and make a starter. You want to pull it and use it. You talk about like with your brink, that your fancy half barrel brink you're using. That's a week or less storage in your repitching.
Well, this is previous brewery. We would pull yeast into a keg, like a corny keg, actually.
Okay.
Pull it into a corny keg, put it in the cooler, put an airlock on it, and then repitch that whole or half a corny keg, depending on how much beer or what beer we're brewing, but just pitch it straight in. We wouldn't even do a starter or a prop on that. It would just be straight in.
Okay.
Yeah, so the yeast is going to start dying off though, because it's got nothing to eat, it's got nothing to do. I know one of the yeast suppliers we purchased from, they say if you buy the yeast and if you don't use it within a certain time, you can add a little bit of sterile wort to kind of feed the yeast and keep it active, keep it happy.
Okay.
And so so that's another way to keep that yeast going. You don't want to freeze it because the cell walls will burst. You got to cryogenically freeze it. So it's a whole different process. If you're trying to freeze it for slants and things like that, that's a different process. But you want to keep it cold and just use it as quick as you can. Keep it cold, away from oxygen.
Okay.
You're almost having this conversation with Peter because he mentioned that I think what this is all about is he has a unique strain. And so your recommendation is rather than trying to do a clean, try to keep it healthy. So grow it a little bit, pitch a little bit, And if you have to separate it out and grow it again, don't try to sanitize it and forget about it. Try to keep it active and going until you can use it, unless you're going to do an official plating, which is a totally different process.
And then he does have to clean it, I assume.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, that's what I would recommend. If you have something unique, you can talk to a yeast company and they can bank it for you. You got to pay them a fee, but they can bank it for you. And I don't know if that's worth it on like a small, homebrew size scale, but because we've talked to a brewery before where we did a barrel aged beer. It was actually a pumpkin beer we put in a second use bourbon. We had a wee heavy that we barrel aged. I emptied the barrels and then refilled the barrels with a pumpkin ale, with a 9% pumpkin beer, and then they went sour. And so we stuck it in the back, opened it another year later. This was like 2 years later, and it was like fantastic. So I called up one of the yeast suppliers and I was like, "Hey, can you bank this?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Honestly," he's like, "Wait, he's like, "We can." He's like, "But you're going to repitch it. It's going to grow. It's going to mutate. It's going to change." He's like, "It's not going to be the same thing anyway." So you had lightning in a bottle, and it's kind of it's not easy to replicate, is what his recommendation. He's like, "We can bank it, but it's not really worth it, because especially if you're doing like a barrel age or a wild thing, it could be more than one yeast in there. It could be all kinds of stuff in there, and then as you repitch it, it'll just change, and your quantities of one yeast or bacteria will change, so the beer will change, even if you reuse that yeast over and over."
That's reminiscent of the
pressure will change it.
Mm-hmm.
It's reminiscent of was the magic cask, I think, that New Belgium had at one point in time for Lafayette that passed around the industry.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, barrel, was it?
Yeah, now too. It was on the Sour Hour here on the Brewing Network. They talked extensively about it, but I can't remember the number either. Yeah.
I want to say 51, but it's probably the area.
No,
Right.
it was something one, like barrel one or something one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
So it turned out that Peter, I think, wasn't just trying to throw us a curveball there.
yeah.
And he's got something special in his hands. So Peter, use that beer, use that yeast, make a beer, man. Let us taste what it's about. That sounds outstanding.
All right. Can I get us to a quick break? We'll come back and do another one. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
You're listening to Brew Strong, and we're doing question and answer. If you're live on Facebook right now, you can send us your questions, or for a future show, send them to brewstrong@thebrewingnetwork.com. We will be right back with more of your beer questions.
Every idea starts with a problem. Warby Parker's was simple. Glasses are too expensive. So they set out to change that. By designing glasses in-house and selling directly to customers, they're able to offer prescription eyewear that's expertly crafted and unexpectedly affordable. Warby Parker glasses are made from premium materials like impact-resistant polycarbonate and custom acetate, and they start at just $95, including prescription lenses. Get glasses made from the good stuff. Stop by a Warby Parker store near you.
This episode is brought to you by Abercrombie. There's nothing better than the perfect jean and going out top combo, or an outfit that perfectly matches your plans. Abercrombie's relaxed jean goes with every occasion. Date nights with something lace, or daytime with a cozy sweater. And their barrel jean will surprise you. It's the trend that will become a staple in your wardrobe. Abercrombie denim comes in tons of rises, fits, and washes. Find your perfect pair online or in store.
The wrongs we must right. The fights we must win. The future we must secure together for our nation. This is what's in front of us. This determines what's next for all of us. We are Marines. We were made for this.
Learning to brew has never been so disgusting. This is Brew Strong.
Hey, welcome back to Brew Strong. We are hanging out with Huggy Bear and my co-host Travis. I'm filling in for Jamil Zainasheff, and we're doing a question and answer period. We've got some of our good friends in the chat room on Facebook. You can join there also, and you can send your questions to brewstrong@thebrewingnetwork.com. We love to get beer questions. We love to get stumped too, by the way. We don't have to know everything. Send us your stumper questions, and that's fine too. All right, what do we got next, Travis?
All right. So this is related to our last show. So anyone who wants more in depth on this question should definitely listen to the previous show. And if you're like me, where you find a podcast, you start going backwards, it's great. More info on this on the next one you listen to. Sean asks, Mr. Palma and Mr. Zainashev.
Oh yeah.
Is yes, is
I'll
does it
pretend I'm
make
bald.
sense? Does it make sense to use a kettle finding like Whirlflock when using flaked oats in a beer? Aren't you just dropping out the protein you tried to put in? If it does make sense to add both, why? Thanks a lot. Show is great, and you guys have helped my beers immeasurably. Blah, 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 blah. Yes, it's 5 blahs. Sean, we're going to go for 6 blahs here.
There you
We're
go.
going to try to add a 6th blah here. Sean loves Mr. Palma and Mr. Zainashev. Love Sean. Thank you, Sean, so much for that excellent question. So
It is. Sounds like a Huggy Bear question.
Absolutely.
Apparently, I'm the expert now on this.
Yeah.
You hit on this 100%. He says flaked oats, which the only reason you use flaked oats isn't just a haze, but that's part of what people are doing when they make a NEPA.
Yeah, you're also trying to get body. So you're not going to drop out. You're dropping out the larger proteins that don't taste good. They don't have a good. They give you that haze as well. So you can use it to drop out those unwanted proteins and the polyphenols. You don't have the yeast yet, so it'd be just the protein, the polyphenols at that point.
Right. So it's not contradictive to use Whirlflock in. If I'd probably use Whirlflock if I were making an oatmeal stout. You know, I'm not going for a turbid stout. I'm going for a smaller stout with a lot of body, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so I don't see them.
Yeah, you still want it. You don't want a murky stout. You know, you still want it to be good looking. Same thing with Hefeweizen. You know, that's a lot of wheat, and so even if you have a Hefeweizen, once it will drop clear over time.
Yeah.
But it still has that. It should have that same body to it.
So wits and halves in their proper environment, they are served shaken as the pour is finished. You know, first half I ever had in Germany, he put the bottle sideways on the countertop, and my head went sideways too because I didn't understand what the heck he was doing.
Yeah.
You know, and I've seen wits poured the same way, wits out of a bottle. You know, it separates. It's something they do. You want that back in the beer. That's how you get it back in the beer. Because it's going to fall out.
And that's the yeast that's dropping out there. And that gives you that flavor. And some of those yeasts do taste good. And so you want to put them back in. And so that yeast is what's giving you that haze in that case. In those cases.
It's not the resinous hop coated yeast that we may not like in an IPA.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because the yeast will absorb all the hop oils and it tastes super bitter at that point.
Very.
Yeah. I love your comment, by the way, that you still don't want a like murky stout. You still don't want a muddy stout. Like that's a great. You don't think about that when you put it that way. You're like, oh man, you're right. I've had a murky stout, and
you can taste it too.
You can taste it, and a stout is actually a beautiful looking beer in a glass.
Yes, it is.
It's gorgeous, right?
Man. Yeah.
But not when it's mud. So
right. There's some nice ruby notes shining through that brown. Yeah.
Yeah. You want to. I mean, I don't know what the definition or the terms are for the amount of clarity it has going through the glass, but you want some of it, you know.
Right.
So yeah. Good point. All right. You got another one for us?
I do. Lou writes in, "Hey guys, wondering if you could help me with an issue I'm having with head retention." Yes, this is the one I thought it was. Okay, so euphemisms aside, well, not aside, this is full of euphemisms. So when I first got married 8 years ago, I had no problems with head retention.
Okay. Yeah.
And he's got parallels to his marriage and his homebrewing the whole way through. So, but as the marriage has drawn on, I can't help but feel like, Justin, can we charge him for this question? I can't help but feel like the quality and quantity of head retained has fallen off. Yeah. I don't think I've changed anything in my process. Surely you have. And I even tried adding a bit of wheat malt to the marriage. I don't get that one. To no avail. Everything else is going great. Just don't feel like I'm receiving the head I used to.
Mm.
I'm wondering if a product from one of your sponsors would help. Cheers. Keep up the good work. Really appreciate the insight and laughs you provide. So I
don't think this is a beer question. Gonna go out on a limb here and say that even though he was trying to parallel two questions, I don't think he did.
So if we look at Lou's question, as Lou really intended to say that he's a home brewer that's been home brewing for 8 years now, and somehow as he continues to brew, his beer has lower head retention now than it did 8 years ago.
Okay, we can take that.
So what could have happened? I can think of one thing off the top of my head. What might have happened in 8 years that would reduce his head retention? And the thing I'm going to throw out there is really basic, as he probably started off using extracts. And then he went to doing all grain, and extracts do not ferment out for me the way that all grain does. I could try the same recipe forever ago when I brewed shittier beer than ever before, and almost twice the finishing gravity from all these extracts. And I don't know if that was all sugar or some other things affecting the gravity, but I got to think there had to be a lot of change in his process over 8 years and recipes, etc., more so than the fact that he's trying to give his wife wheat.
Yeah, probably gluten intolerant too. Yeah,
interesting question.
I'd add another one. Okay, if we're going to go down this road, that really his head retention has reduced over time. This is a real question. Might not sound like one, but does beer scale on your equipment that you haven't cleaned off? Would this have an effect on things? Huggy, what do you think about that? Like, I'm just trying to think of things that happen over time that if you're not changing a damn thing, what could affect your head retention?
Yeah, I think it's obviously, I think his processes have changed over time. He's tried to get better, but it doesn't. Sometimes you go, oh, I need to do it this way, but then it could negatively affect, another piece that you're not thinking about. For beer stone, it can affect your efficiency on heating, like in your kettle.
Okay.
If you have that buildup, it doesn't want to burn and boil as good. But, I guess if you have a weak boil, that could affect, I think you could affect your head retention.
Okay. And thinking of the process, like, all right, you start to have some favorite malts. Like, you're like, oh man, I really love this. I'm going to use more rye. I'm going to use more of this. And then maybe you're not also compensating with a couple little percentages of malts that add to head retention, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're trying to moving on from the basics because you're falling in love with some different things, like you said, like your process,
Yeah, and then like certain malts have fallen out of favor over time. Like crystal malts are used less.
Right.
And then people are using more Pilsner and base malts. And so they're using less malts that can give you better head retention. So that could be, that could be something if your recipes have evolved.
Well, let me use this question to ask you this, Huggy. What do you like to use? What malt little addition do you like to use? Do you have something that you put in every beer because you're like stoked on what it does to your head retention? Do you have
no? I don't have a secret. I know golden naked oats can add a whipped cream kind of consistency to your head.
Okay. Yeah.
Usually wheat and some of those protein malts can add some head retention. Another product. I have
the big question of how Duvel makes that marshmallow head.
Mm-hmm.
And I know some of it's time, but it's not entirely time. I mean, also some of it's like 3.5 to 4 volumes of CO2.
Yeah, I think part of that.
Is it? I mean, does the Belgian Pils malt magically have just that outstanding head retention protein in it? Magically,
I think a lot of it. I think is processes. As you get better at brewing, you can. There's better as long as your practicing good processes, you should have good head retention. If you want to cheat, you can use a Tetra hop extract. It's a hop extract, and Miller uses it. It also doesn't react with sunlight, so Miller uses it in their which one is that? MGD is in a clear bottle, right? And it doesn't get skunky because it uses a Tetra hop extract, and so it uses it for bittering, and it also adds head retention as well as a side effect. But I have seen pictures. You can look them up on the internet. If you use too much of it, you'll get a foam retention that looks fake. It looks like styrofoam. It looks like weird. You use too much of it, so you got to be careful on how much you use of that stuff.
I bet Dual has something like that, and it might even make sense that they would use something like that as they're trying to perfect this Belgian Strong Golden without making it overly too hoppy, too this, too that.
Yeah, and Tetra extract's been around for decades. It's been around for a long, long time. So a lot of big breweries use it, obviously. And yeah.
By the way, they're not trying to perfect the Belgian Golden Strong. They've done it. That shit
defined it. Yes. That's true. They defined it. Honestly, it's sorry. Yeah. Side note, Dual's the bomb. Yeah, and they even do the triple hop versions outstanding. And somehow you can pick up a year-old bottle of their stuff, and it's just how can it be this good a year later?
Yeah. Maybe we can get them on the show.
Absolutely, if we can.
All right. Yeah. So to me, head retention is fascinating too, because we can and should do an entire show on this, because, every now and then I get a beer from my favorite breweries who I will buy. I don't even have to taste it first. I will buy their beer, and the head retention dropped off. And it's kind of why I was asking Huggy if there's like a magic bullet, which of course he said there's not. Like everything, there's going to be so many variables. But yeah, even my favorite breweries, every now and then it's like, oh man, where did it go? Where's the head?
Yeah, I remember even there was a brewery in Houston that they worked on their first lager, and it didn't have the head retention you wanted. And I came over one day, and he had the beer glass to his ear, and he's like, this looks weird. I know. He's like, I'm listening to the foam and trying to figure out how fast it's dying off by listening to it.
No.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Wow.
Eventually, they figured it out eventually. So that first batch they put in kegs only, and then they were going to package it in cans, but they skipped that first one until they could figure it out. And I don't remember. I think he just added some specialty malt to kind of bump up that foam.
Okay.
The specialty malt, not wheat, to make your marriage survive. Sorry.
There you go. All right. So do you have a last one before we have to go?
Well, I've got one. I've got one for you.
Okay.
As David in Sweden wants to know, in the last issue of BYO, Dave read that you could buy the DVD Brewing the Perfect American Pale Ale as a download. Dave is from Sweden. So it'd be so much easier for him to download rather than buying the DVD and paying shipping, etc.
Right.
But he can't find a way to do that in the store. Is Dave a nutball, or isn't it possible to buy it that way? This Brewing the Perfect American Pale Ale DVD in the Brewing Network store.
Well, I'm not embarrassed to admit that this is probably an old question that came into us. And, in my time at the Brewing Network, I've been known to say things are going to happen well in advance of me figuring out how they're going to happen. And this is one of them. So we had created these, couple of DVDs. The Firestone Walker Pale 31 was our main one. Great. By the way, I'm just going to say it. Great DVD. Matt Brynelson came out and showed us how to brew the beer in my backyard. I mean, this is a production that I will be proud of until I die. Right?
This is what Dave's asking about?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, you're kidding me.
I think so.
I need that too. Dave, I'm on board with you. I need that download. Yeah.
So what happened was, at this time, because I'm so old and have been around doing this for so long, at this time, like just downloading a video wasn't that easy. So we went the DVD route. That's when people bought fucking DVD. Blockbuster Video might have been open when we did this. Okay. And then very quickly, things were changing like quickly. This is my life. This is the story of my life, by the way. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm onto something. And then, no, it's changed. And I'm certain that back then I was like, oh, don't worry. I'll figure out how to make this downloadable. And I probably never did. I probably never figured out. And probably went on the air and was like, don't worry, it'll be downloadable by Tuesday. And that never happened. To this day, Mr. Sweden, it's still not downloadable. And in fact, I think the only DVD copies that are still in existence might be in a More Beer warehouse because they bought my entire stock and sold like a companion kit. Like you could buy the recipe and the DVD. And so you are not stupid. What's his name from Sweden?
David from Sweden.
David from Sweden, you are not stupid. Quite the opposite. This is another one. This is in my trail of failures. This is one of them. I never figured out how to make a downloadable DVD, which now, by the way, if I did this video now, like it would just be on YouTube, right? But back then it just wasn't that easy. And so that's my excuse.
That question was so much more interesting than I ever imagined.
You got a little behind the scenes. Did I ever even release the Dan Gordon video? We have a video with Dan Gordon doing it too, and I don't even think I released that. It was him teaching us how to do like the perfect pill.
You got to digitize these.
I know. I might have them on a hard drive somewhere. I'm not the greatest business person. What I'm doing with you guys right now, this is what I do. I bullshit with nice people. That's what I'm good at. Though. That's what I'm good at. The rest of it is like, God, I hope I figure this out so I can make it. Oh, that's my answer. It's not available. There's got to be all right. I'm going to say this now, and I'm not going to follow through. I have to find a copy of it somewhere that I can digitize, and let me see if I can do it. Yeah. There we go.
That'd be awesome. I'd like to watch that.
Yeah, I'm on the list, please.
There are two. We were going to do a whole series, but what had happened was we hired an entire production company to help us do it. This great people, nice people, but then like the DVD sales were slow and we didn't figure out how to digitize it. And but we were going to do, there was going to be 20 of those videos, but YouTube caught on basically faster than I could. And all of a sudden you could just go on YouTube and do whatever you wanted. Like that's basically what happened.
Yeah. YouTube did some things. They did. I mean, kind of grew. Yeah. I mean, however you want to look at YouTube, they kind of blew up a little bit.
They did. They did. I mean, it's the same. Look at. I'll do it quickly because I know we're on time here. But it's the same with podcasts. Podcasts started simultaneously as I did, and they beat me. Like, in other words, when I did my first show, we were live streaming radio. There were no podcasts. There was maybe one podcast. Within a month, there were podcasts. So my listeners started asking me back then, like, hey, it's pain in the ass to go to your website and either watch your show, listen to your show live or download it. Could you turn it into a podcast? And so I was like, yeah, as soon as I Google what a podcast is, I could turn this show into a podcast. So even in 2005, when we started, things were just moving faster than us.
Well, that's a great point because way back when it was all on the website.
It was just on the website because I didn't know what a podcast was.
You were hosting it.
Nobody did. Like 8 of my listeners knew what a podcast was out of thousands. And they asked me to turn it into a podcast. And I said, sure, and figured it out. Took me a month probably. But then everything's just moved faster. Luckily for me, even though the technologies move faster, my listeners are as slow as I am. And so they didn't move faster. So it worked for me for several years. And now everything's just taken off. Like it's just way out there. Yeah. Like there's probably virtual reality podcasts right now where they don't look at our ugly faces. They look at like beautiful AI faces talking about the same thing, Yeah. That'll be our next question about it. People will be like, I love your show. I don't like looking at you guys. Could you turn yourselves into AI avatars that are more attractive? That'll be our next. You'll see.
Well, the answer would be yes, but F you,
All right. I digress. My apologies. That question took me back, I think that's all we have time for, though. So I hope that's a good cap to the show.
I thought it was outstanding. That question was so much better than I thought it ever could be. It was really good.
Yeah, I gotta watch these. Gotta watch these videos now.
Yeah. I'll find it. I'll at least send you a copy, Huggy. If you still have a DVD player, then I can do that. But
I can rip it for you if you send me a DVD, and we can share it with everybody.
There we go. I was gonna say now we got to go to the thrift store and buy a DVD player so we can watch these.
I have some USB DVD players.
Nice. I have a DVD player in my RV. I'm old school in all the ways, man.
How does it always come back to the RV? That's outstanding.
This does. I'm white trash, man. That's how it goes.
No.
All right. Well, I want to say thanks to our friend Huggy Bear for being on not just this episode, but the episode previous as well to talk to us about findings. It's been great to talk with you, and I hope I get to try your beer next time I'm in Texas.
Yeah. Please come down. Love to show you around.
Will do. Go see my friend Chad at Bankhead. He used to be our producer, and now he's a great brewer. He won an award this year.
Very
I think
cool.
the second year in a row for one of his beers at GABF. So go check it out.
Yeah, sounds great.
Give him a little plug because he worked for free for me for so long. I feel like I owe him.
The secret to your success: people working for free.
Yeah, man. But I try to give back and like, hey, if you start your own venture, it'll work. Like I'll promote it. So it worked for Jamil, right? Yeah. All right. Hey, Travis, always fun to do a show with you. Yes. I appreciate it very much. I think we're trying to do one next week too. So you just let me know and we'll let our listeners know. We like to keep these Brew Strongs flowing to you, even though we're waiting for Jamil to come back and sit in the host seat for you. But thanks for letting me co-host with you. I really appreciate it.
Great show, fellas.
All right. Hey, thanks again to Blickman Engineering. We love them so much. You should go love them too. Go to blickmanengineering.com and check it out. And thank them for supporting the show as they've done for all these years. Jamil, I'll keep doing my best to fill the big shoes that I'm trying to fill here in this seat. And you get well soon and come on back. And Travis, we'll see you next time, right?
Absolutely. Brew Strong.
Brew Strong, everybody. Take care.